and welcome to the second day of the Commonwealth Trade and Investment Summit for 2021. My name is Samantha Cohen and I'm the CEO of CWEIC, and it's a great pleasure to welcome you all here this afternoon. And we've got an incredible panel of very distinguished women joining us. And before I introduce the chair of the panel, Shalom Lloyd, I would just like to unashamedly give a short plug for this fantastic book which Mrs. Alakija, who is one of our panelists, has written, and it really does have some incredible nuggets, I suppose they are, on what she's gained over her journey through life, and it talks about leadership and the values and what she's learnt as an exceptional female leader and what she would like to pass on to the next generation, which I think is a very fitting way to start this session, which is called Gaps and Gains on the Road to Equality, and showcasing exceptional women and preparing for the next generation. So thank you very much, Mrs. Alakija, for sharing your insights with us. I'm now going to introduce the wonderful Shalom Lloyd, who will be chairing this session this afternoon. Shalom is a British-Nigerian scientist with a BSc and an MSc in pharmacy from the Ukrainian Academy of Pharmacy and an MBA from the University of Liverpool. Shalom is also the founder of Naturally Tribal Skincare, a natural chemical-free skincare company built on valuing healthy, ethical and sustainable living while empowering women and giving them an income. Shalom is also the Chief Strategy Officer at Emerging Markets Quality Trials, an organisation focused on diversity in clinical trials, providing the global pharmaceutical industry access to patients in Africa. She holds several NED positions, including the Milton Keynes Chamber of Commerce. Shalom is a World Trader Freeman and a Department of International Trade export champion, a mentor and a strong believer in the fact that anything is possible. So I'd now like to hand over to Shalom, who would lead this exceptional panel this afternoon of women leaders. Thank you very much, Shalom.
Thank you so much, Sam, for that wonderful introduction. I hope that everyone can hear me okay. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for this session at the Commonwealth Trade and Investment Summit. It's a great pleasure to be invited to chair and lead this session. I have enjoyed a long relationship with the Commonwealth Enterprise and Investment Council, first from graduating the Commonwealth First Export Champion Program, and now joining the What a Discussion that the Council convenes. As you heard, hopefully, from other speakers from yesterday and earlier on today, the Commonwealth Trade and Investment Summit was developed by the Commonwealth Enterprise and Investment Council when the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, CHOGM, and the Commonwealth Business Forum, CBS, was postponed for the second time, I think, in June 2021. I was personally looking forward to this, to CHOGM and CBF, as it would have been the first in Africa, because for me, having businesses here in the UK and Africa is quite close to my heart. But I look forward to the new dates being announced so we can actually begin preparations to meet in person in Rwanda next year, hopefully. In the meantime, I am delighted to have been asked to be part of this summit, and particularly this panel. The Commonwealth is home to some incredible, amazing entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs, business leaders, and trailblazers. But they're far too few. And many of them still find their path to the top blocked. We will look today at where this is being overcome and what we need to do. We'll also look at what established businesses and business leaders can do to nurture and mentor female talent. All you have to do is look at the panel that we have in front of you, and you know that this will be a great discussion. For me personally, I believe that when you educate a woman, you educate a community, you educate a generation, you educate a nation. Those of you who have heard of the Alison Rose review, there was a highlight in that review that talks about up to £250 billion could be added to the UK economy if women started and scaled up their businesses at the same rate as men. That is staggering. Now, if we move to Africa for a second, Africa leads the world in terms of the number of women business owners. In fact, women in Africa are more likely than men to be entrepreneurs. Women make up 58% of the continent's self-employed population. In a recent World Bank report, I think it was called Profiling from Parity, it showed that women entrepreneurs across sub-Saharan Africa continue to earn lower profits than men, 34% less on average. These are things that we should not just be talking about. I believe in we think it, we say it, we do it. It's time for less conversation and more action. So I'm delighted to be leading such a great, high profile and diverse panel on this subject. We will hear from a woman who I absolutely admire, Apostle Folorunsha Alakija, Vice Chair of Farm for Oil. Mrs. Alakija continues to be an inspiration for women across Africa and across the world. Her philanthropic work includes supporting women entrepreneurs, providing them with platforms to flourish. She recently launched, I think it was a ₦1 billion fund to promote women-owned businesses in Africa. And the fund will support at least 2,500 businesswomen. So welcome, ma'am. We have a wonderful woman who needs no introduction, Dame Martina Milburn, Group Chief Executive of the Prince's Trust Group, who work on developing skills and opportunities for young people. Thank you so much for being here. Amanda Pollinger, CEO of 100 Women in Finance, whose organization is working with industry to drive change in a sector that is male-dominated, where there's far too few opportunities for women to take top roles. That is changing, we know that, but is it fast enough? Amanda, welcome and thank you for being with us. And last but not least, Enitan Solari, Managing Director, YOA Insurance Brokers, who's part of the leadership team of one of Nigeria's fastest growing insurance firms. Her perspective, both from her own business, but also from an industry that can do more to ensure women-led businesses have the tools they need to prosper, will be invaluable. Anita, welcome. So hopefully everybody out there can see that we have a powerhouse, and I'm super excited. Before we begin, I would like to remind you all that the Commonwealth Enterprise and Investment Council is a not-for-profit membership organization. They work on behalf of their members, providing bespoke services. I have personally experienced the brilliant connections they have made for me and benefited from their convening power. So if you'd like to know more about how the Commonwealth Enterprise and Investment Council can help your business, please reach out to one of the members of the team. I will keep quiet in a second and let all this begin, but I just need to give you some housekeeping rules. The meeting will start today with opening remarks from Apostle Folorunsha Alakija. Then next, that will be for just 5 minutes. Then next, we'll have our amazing panelists will give 2-minute opening remarks before we then move into a panel discussion. After the panel discussion, we'll open it up for questions and answers, but please feel free to put those into the Q&A box. So we're keeping to 2 minutes, but we'll start now. I invite Apostle Folorunsha Alakija for the opening remarks for 5 minutes. Thank you.
The chairman, Ms. Shalom Lloyd, my panelists, my co-panelists, and all other distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Kofi Annan, a former Secretary General of the United Nations, once said, and I quote, "Gender equality is more than a goal in itself. It's a precondition for meeting the challenge of reducing poverty, promoting sustainable development, and building good governance." I welcome everyone to today's auspicious event, where we have come to discuss the age-long problem of inequality against women folk, and to celebrate the milestones that we have achieved over the years. It's heartwarming to say that we have come a long way from when it was believed that a woman's place was in the kitchen. According to the World Bank, the report of 2020, women are estimated to be about 49.6% of the world population. Yet, the gap in the opportunities available to women in leadership positions at both the business and governmental are still quite wide. Women are still subjected to perennial biases, discrimination, and marginalization. A World Bank report of March 2020 indicates that out of three businesses, one of three businesses are owned by women. Therefore, if these women have access to finance, they will grow their businesses and contribute more to the GDP of their respective countries. All stakeholders, such as the government, the financial sector, and NGOs, need to support women entrepreneurs to bridge the finance gaps. At the Rose of Sharon Foundation, our NGO for widows and orphans, we have supported over 4,000 female entrepreneurs with training and interest-free loans, either as startups or to expand their businesses. Also, our Flourish Africa NGO established to improve our female and career women, is in the process, as was said just now, of commencing training for 2,500 female entrepreneurs, out of which 1 billion naira, approximately $2.4 million, is in grants will be given to 500 female business owners over the next 5 years. For any firm to be truly effective, they need to employ a diversity of skills, cultures, views, and values. When a corporate organization has a gender diverse senior leadership, management, and board, there will be an improvement in their financial performance and shareholder value. Women already sitting at board levels should also support their fellow women through coaching, mentoring, and training so that more women can sit and be effective at boardrooms. Governments should also legislate laws that enshrine gender diverse boards in both public and private organizations. We must also ensure that unseen biases that exist against women in our workplace is eliminated so that creativity, diversity, inclusivity, and productivity are not hindered. I trust that today's conversation will bring forth solutions that will hopefully be adopted across the Commonwealth nations. Thank you, and let the conversations begin.
That is amazing. If this was live, I'd be clapping. I'd be standing and clapping. So thank you so much for that. There were some incredible things that came out of that. Absolutely. Things that stood out for me personally was the need for women to support women. Sometimes we look outward for the support. We also have to support each other. That gender diversity on boards, eliminating the unseen bias. These are amazing points that have been touched. And I think it's something that we'll go into in the panel discussion. We really appreciate that. Thank you so, so much for the sort of really powerful opening remark. So now we'll actually go into our 2-minute opening remarks with our panel, who will actually give you their point of view of the subject in question and introduce themselves again. I would like to start with Dame Martina Milburn. Over to you.
Thank you. I have to say my heart sang, Chairman, when you said it's time for action. We've had enough talking. I so agree. And we know a lot of what works. You know, when I first started this job 18 years ago, I met a fantastic woman who was in prison, very worried about what was going to happen to her twin girls. We helped at the Prince's Trust set her up in business. When she left prison, she now runs 3 successful businesses. Those girls are both studying to be lawyers, and she also is a civic leader in her community. So we know it works. My great fear is we're doing this on the back of an epidemic which has seen a surge in 2020, the biggest surge in child marriages for 25 years. The UN is estimating at least 11 million girls who were in school will not be going back to school. And we see a huge divide between the attitudes of women and men towards things like digital. So Prince's Trust International has just done some research, and only 10% of girls and women felt that a digital program could be as effective as face-to-face program. And we know if we're not going to embrace digital, we're not going to be able to reach the numbers we do. So I have fears, but I'm also very optimistic. I can give you another example of a fantastic woman, a girl in Kenya, Ekaleli, who did a Prince's Trust International program, which was a sort of board game simulation. On the back of that, her mother, who must be amazing, gave her $45 US dollars, her life savings, and they turned what she'd learnt into the game into a real business. And again, fast forward only 2 years, she's now bringing in double her mum's income. Her mother has joined her in the business and she's helping educate her younger sisters. So given the right support, given practical targeted help, women can make a huge difference. And it's about time we stopped talking about it and started doing it.
I am going to have many applause moments and mic drop moments in this session. Thank you so much for that, Martina. I mean, education is a huge necessity. 11 million not going back into education would be a huge, significant setback. But like you, I remain optimistic. It is interesting what you talk about. 10% of girls and women felt that the digital program will not be as effective. We have to find a hybrid solution, a way of bridging that gap as well. So thank you so much for that. I will move on to our next keynote speaker, Amanda Follinger. Amanda, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity. So I'm the CEO of 100 Women in Finance, a global financial services industry organization in 28 locations across 4 continents. As an organization, we have a clear and straightforward mission to attract far more women into careers in finance and to empower them towards the industry's highest levels. The bigger goal, of course, is to create fairer and more equitable systems in the management of capital. This creates healthier economies and societies and allows for greater gender equality. The subtitle of this session, Showcasing Exceptional Women Leaders and Preparing the Next Generation, actually describes exactly what we do at 100 Women in Finance. Through our global education events, we create a platform for women to be seen as experts in their field. Through our peer engagement initiatives, we enable women in the industry at every stage of their career to find like-minded women so they don't feel like they're the only one in the room. Our visibility initiatives serve to connect the industry with diverse talent. We currently host 2 visibility initiatives on our website, Fund Women and Women in FinTech. And we'll soon be launching an allocator showcase for women who are chief investment officers at institutional investors. Next week, I'm so excited that we'll be holding our 2nd annual global virtual Fund Women conference, where we will have a platform for 400 investors to meet with over 300 female fund managers for introductory meetings that we believe will lead to allocation of capital. And finally, through our global impact initiatives, we seek to inspire, equip, and advocate for the next generation of pre-career women, whatever their background or previous knowledge of the industry. We believe that by showcasing exceptional women leaders and preparing the next generation, we can change the demographics of our industry and those we invest in for good. Thanks so much again, and I look forward to the panel.
That was amazing, Amanda. Thank you so much for that. Important for women to be given the opportunity to be visible and to establish themselves as experts in their field. You talk about 400 investors and having this 300 fund managers being put in front of them with no access to finance, as Mrs. Alakija had mentioned in her remarks, is really an issue in this regard. So thank you so much for that. I think you should be really called not 100 women, but 1,000 women. It's 54 Commonwealth countries, so we need more. We need more women. So thank you so much for that. And now we'll come to Anita Solari. Anita, over to you to do your opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Shalom. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much to the CWEIC for this opportunity to be on this panel. I have to say that I think I agree with the chairman, Apostle Alakija, about saying we need to do something now. But I have to say that we have to admit that over the last 30 years at least, there has been significant improvement in gender parity. And the fact that some of us are here today is part of the evidence of that. However, all right, yes, governments have developed policies and legislated in this area, in the gap areas, and a lot of private sectors and NGOs have championed various programs to targeted set up targets to close the gender gap. However, we have to realize that, according to the World Economic Forum, the Gender Gap Index 2020, it basically said that at the rate of progress, it's going to take at least 99.5 years to achieve gender parity. And this is a huge shock. And so the question now is, what do we need to do, right? I personally believe that it's time to accelerate the progress, which is why I said it is time to stop talking and to do more. And so the question is, what do we need to do? I firmly believe that there must be an intentionality about embedding gender parity in cultural norms, in education, in business, in finance, in advancing women in management and leadership positions. There has to be focus, right? We need to identify some of the key areas of gap, and we need to begin to work on them, which is why I'm particularly excited about the World Economic Forum through its Gender Accelerator Program, which has basically identified specific areas and implanting accelerator groups within different countries. I think it is very, very important for a lot of countries to get on board, because I think at the moment, only 9 countries, and most of them in Latin America, are actually involved in this program. I think this will give focus, right, to what needs to be done in this particular area. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Wow, Anita, I think you kind of brought us down to earth quite a bit. Almost 100 years to achieve gender parity. This is where action is so important. I think we've all talked about the people that we need to get on board, governments, and I think it's up to absolutely every single one of us. It doesn't matter if you have an SME, it doesn't matter if you're leading a global organization. I believe it's down to we haven't got 100 years. This cannot be 100 years. So absolutely, again, I believe in think it, say it, do it. The action starts now. I mean, it started already, but we need to accelerate it, like you said. So thank you so much. Now we're going to actually move into the panel discussion. And some of the questions, hopefully, that are coming through from the audience, hopefully we'll be able to answer some of these during the panel discussion. So the first question I will pose out there is accessing finance. And Amanda, you kind of alluded to this already because access to financing is an issue. So in Africa, for example, the African Development Bank estimates a 20 billion financing gap for African women, causing the growth of these businesses to suffer. How do we close the financing gap for women in business? Because this comes up over and over again. I mean, this is a question for all the panel, but I'll start with you, Amanda.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. Over the 20 years that 100 Women has been around, we've always ended up in a situation where we realize we've got to connect the industry who are looking for women or diverse people to those people themselves. The traditional ways of doing business, for whatever reason, there are many reasons for it, don't seem to adequately connect the industry, in this case, we're talking about the finance industry, to those who are not traditionally, who haven't traditionally been represented, whether it's fund managers, whether it's underlying businesses that those funds want to invest in. So we've got to do a number of things. Number one, we need to make these women and their businesses visible to the world. And so one of the interesting things about COVID is that for the very first time, 100 Women was able to operate on a global platform. We've always had locations around the world, but actually COVID and the use of virtual technology means now when we put a fund woman, a woman who's managing funds on a platform like Zoom, all of a sudden, global investors can see her, can see what she's doing, can see her as an expert. And I often have to remind women that as much as we are focused on performance, and in the finance world, it is about that number at the end of the day, right? As much as we're focused on hard work and performance, unfortunately, that's not how you grow your business. You've got to spend some of your time building your brand, getting out there, being visible. You know, as young girls, we are all taught that if you work hard, somebody will notice you. And that works at school, but it doesn't work in the business world. In the business world, we've got to create our own brand. We've got to be visible, and rather than just focusing on hard work. Now, on the other side, we need opportunities for those women to be visible. We need opportunities for those women to be seen by the industry. And so that's the reason, for example, that we've created this Fund Women Visibility Initiative on our website with a directory, because now no longer can investors say, we can't find the women. The women are right there, right? So it's almost like, what's your excuse now? You've said that was your excuse. You couldn't find them. Now what's your excuse? And whatever their excuse is, we are going to meet those excuses, and we're going to provide them with very practical solutions to ensuring that we see allocation of capital. Now, it's the early stages, right? This is just making an introduction from an institutional investor to a female manager. But frankly, and this is the other thing that I say to fund women, you know, unless an institutional investor knows you exist, they're not going to invest in you. So let's really send the message that women need to be visible, but also let's send a message to the industry that you have a responsibility to do a better job at looking for these opportunities. I don't want to hear that you tried one person and it didn't happen. Try harder, right? Do more to diversify where you're seeking that female talent.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Martina, I'll come to you really quickly because you talked about the digital piece. I mean, Amanda's spoken about visibility, but that doesn't apply to, women across the globe, really, because you talked about 10% of girls and women feeling that the digital program wasn't effective because of access to the digitalization era that we live in today. When it comes to that access to finance, what is your thoughts on that?
I think it's probably pretty much the same. And I think Amanda hit the nail on the head. which all comes back to the same word, and it's confidence. And women need to feel more confident in their product, which is why mentors are so fantastic. They need to feel that, okay, you've been knocked back once, I can go again. You know, we've all sat in on interviews willing the woman opposite us to answer the right questions. And every question starts with a, well, maybe. And, you know, so I guess it comes back to schooling and education, and it's confidence, confidence, confidence. And as women, we can do much more to support women to gain those confidence, whether it's finance, whether it's school, whether it's setting up their business or whatever path they choose in life. And if you take me as an example, my grandmother was in service, as they say in the UK, and my mother left school at 14. They're sadly both passed away now, but if they could see me as a dame, they would be completely staggered. And the one thing they gave me was confidence. And I think if I can do it, anybody can do it. So they've got to keep trying.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Can I just jump in and say that role modeling is a really critical piece of this, because I do think that if girls can see that someone like them has made it and they can see the pathway to getting there, that's a really critical piece. And a lot of what we're trying to do is to reach out to pre-career girls and to demonstrate that there are women in all sorts of roles in the industry, so that they can then gain that confidence to know, you know, I can try this because she did it, I can do it.
I couldn't agree more. Actually, having seen people who look like you, who sound like you, etc., that is really, really powerful. So I'm looking at the time. We'll have to move on, if that's okay, to the next question. Female participation in boardrooms is at the forefront of empowering female leaders. This is unfortunately a major issue across the globe. How can we ensure more women move from senior management positions to boardrooms and sit at the heart of decision making in the corporate world? Apostle Alakija, I'll come to you on that, because you actually mentioned in your keynote speech about having more women in boardrooms.
There are countries that have already done legislations. They have enshrined it in their policies, and it's working, and it's working very well. So government has its own role to play, just as much as women have their own role to play to help women to get to the boardrooms. In our company, for instance, we ensure that we have at least 3/4 of our management level as women. So it starts from there. Well, it doesn't really start from there. It starts from home, really, building leaders from home. And so if women are in positions to be able to help other women to move up the ladder, yes, the boardroom is the next level. But I find that legislation really works if it can be enshrined in the policies of the government, that a certain percentage of boards, of organizations and corporations should have women on their boards. It really does work, because we all know that women only need to be given the opportunity to get there, and they will prove themselves. It's just getting the foot in the door and being able to be given that opportunity to have their say and be able to do what they can do. And usually we can do a lot more than the men, from what I've observed. So it's just being given equal opportunities, you understand? And the boardroom is a major and a very good place for them to get to begin to make a difference in their country, and of course, continent, and in the world.
Thank you so much for that. Absolutely agree that, impacting policy, enshrining it in policy is certainly going to catapult us. Going back to Anita's 100, it'll take us 100 years. We'll have to do more. Anita, I'll come to you with the same question. If you have any comments of that in terms of female participation, how can we make that happen? How can we make sure we're seeing more women sitting at the heart of the decision-making process?
Thank you, Shalom. I think it's important, role modeling and mentoring is very, very essential. It's not enough to legislate, but it has to be enforced, because a lot of countries with legislations on this, but no one is actually looking at it and making sure that it's being done. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, women also have to be prepared. I have to go back to the issue of confidence, right? A lot of women are skilled, but at the same time lack the confidence, right, to want to go for the leadership role. But once there's active role modeling and mentoring, and there are a number of organizations, right, that do this for women. I know there are a number of organizations in Nigeria, for example, that do this, as in, and I don't know whether I'm allowed to do this, but there's a particular one called Wimboard, where women are actually trained on what to expect and how to go about improving your career, making sure you get on a board, what you need to know to be there. And I think you find that a lot of women, one of the areas, because it's actually something that I'm involved in Nigeria, and you find that a lot of accomplished women are so scared of the fact that numbers, not my thing, I don't understand finance, all right? And as part of the program, what we do is we actually teach women finance as opposed to accounting, all right? And build confidence, right? And also, what they've also done is, as in now companies who are looking for women on their boards, they make recommendations, right, from part of the fellows, right? And so those are the kind of things that need to be done, right, across the world, but across the Commonwealth in this case, as in we have to be deliberate about this. Thank you.
Wow, Anita, it's what you're saying is really music to my ears, and I have to raise my hand and say that I was one of those women who used to say numbers are not my thing, until I realized that could really make or break your business. It is, I totally agree, things like role modeling, mentoring, confidence. Women have to be prepared. We also have to take accountability. I couldn't actually keep the excuse that numbers is not my thing. I had to actually put myself out there and learn my numbers. So thank you so much for that. I will shift gears a bit now, if that's okay. We talked about opportunities before. So the question we have to discuss now is what needs to change in the education system to equip women from an early age to succeed in business and finance careers. And I think, Anita, on what you said earlier, even about knowing your numbers, that could certainly start at a very, very early age. I'll come to Martina with that first, if that's okay.
I think it comes back to a system that's flexible. We have, and you can't find one size that fits all around the world. There are different systems. One of the things they often have in common is their complete rigidity. And we need much more flexibility. A lot of the teachers I speak to want more flexibility in schools. So if you take the Prince's Trust International game I mentioned earlier, it's a game, it's a board game run in schools, and yet it's very flexible. And from that, we've got, it's working with mothers with young babies in India and helping them with their skills. It's providing mentorship and confidence building in the Caribbean. It's looking at gender issues in Jordan. But it's basically the same thing, but it's adaptable. So I wish that our education systems were much more flexible, that teachers certainly had more flexibility in the classroom to be able to really help the young people that need it. But I also think you can't have a debate about things like education without looking at the wider policy issues. So it's partly all been picked up. I mentioned earlier child marriage, ages of consent. These have got to be tackled, and we've got to have more countries prepared to make the ages much higher and outlaw things like that in order that women can get even the education that's on offer. So again, I'd go confidence, flexibility and policy.
Does anyone else want to add anything on the education system, what we have to do to equip women from an early age? Please feel free to jump in there if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about a program that we invested in. Actually, it's a UK program, but it's something that could be really well adapted. It's a program called Maths for Girls. And the idea is, so what we want to do is to encourage more girls in the UK to take A-level maths, right, at 18. Most girls drop out of maths at 16, if they are even interested at that point. And it's a way for teachers to be able to bring in role models of women who are doing all sorts of different types of jobs that require maths. And the reality is that maths is a skill. Maths and computer science are skills that are going to be needed in all sorts of jobs, not just in finance. Obviously, I'm trying to get women into the finance industry. But what's been interesting about the program is these teachers can then have role models coming into the classroom, or right now, obviously, virtually, to talk about how they use maths in their day-to-day job, to really bring to life why you want to study something like maths. Because I think if you think about the education system, most teachers of maths have never left academia. They actually don't know themselves how you might use a subject like maths. So it's really bringing to life what maths is. And there are other programs similar to the one that the Prince's Trust is doing around stock picking competitions that enable young women to think about how do you invest and how does money grow and how do we think about returns on our money. So I think there are a lot of solutions out there, but like everything else we've said, we've got to be able to give access to these solutions to everybody, whatever their background, whatever society they're living in. But again, the upside of virtual technology is if you have that link to the internet, you can be part of this revolution of getting more girls interested in this topic.
I totally agree, Amanda, but I think, just to kind of put a completely different dimension to that, and I'll give an example. I work in Nigeria, in the share sector. The share industry, for example, has 16 million rural African women who are reliant on this industry as a source of income. And these are rural women. So when we talk education, you can't talk about university degrees, etc. We have to redefine what we mean by education, whether it's vocational learning on the job. So we have a facility in Niger State in the Kingdom of Assam where we built this facility, share processing facility, and employing rural women. And part of the education and training is actually getting our managers to teach them how to collect the process properly. One of our supervisors, Elizabeth, has just started actually writing the logs of each process. This is somebody who is not formally educated. For me, that is education. For our facility in Babalada, we have women who are the laboratories who are doing so many different things. Again, we have to define what we mean by education, because sometimes when we say education, we have to look at it from the 54 Commonwealth countries, the developing and the developed, and have that balanced view. Any thoughts on that?
I actually completely agree, which is what I meant by the flexibility, and vocational skills and education has to be higher up the agenda than it is at the moment. But actually, in a way, as Amanda said, that it's practical and women can see why it's making a huge difference to their lives. So totally agree with you, I'm afraid, Chair.
Thank you for that. I've got another question to change gears once again. How do we tackle the issues of perception and expectation? A study by Cambridge University involving 5,800 UK employees in 2019 found that men rarely notice how women's behaviour is judged differently to their own, while 53% of women reported seeing female colleagues being judged more negatively when they behave the same way as men, and only 18% of men spotted the difference. What needs to change to tackle these unseen biases in the workplace? Anita, I'll come to you first, and I'll go to Apostle Malakija because she mentioned this on unseen biases as well.
Right. Actually, when I saw this question, I thought about it and said, wow, this is decades and decades of cultural indoctrination, right? And how do we go about removing this? I think it's a behavioral change. And as more and more women are coming into the workplace, I think men need to be actually mentored by women, right? Coached by women, right? Because there's a certain entitlement, right, that men have, and the conversations need to begin to happen around that, because for them it's sad to say, but it's second nature. But once we start talking about it, because that's the only way to achieve behavioral change, and highlighting it, and actually training men, right, as in making them more emotionally intelligent in that area, I think we'll begin to see a change. So I think for me, I think it's just, since it's an ingrained behavior, right, we have to be intentional. That's why I said earlier about embedding gender parity, right, in cultural norms. I will speak about Nigeria because I know really more about Nigeria, and we're a patriarchy, to be quite honest. All right, and so changing behaviors, all right, it's taking time, all right. It's taking time, but I can see the difference already, because you find now, for example, recently in Nigeria, in 2021, this year, in the last 1 year, we now have 7 female MDs of commercial banks, which is a huge deal for Nigeria. We don't have a female governor, right? And which is, on the political end of it, we don't have a female governor simply because, right, men still don't see how they can submit to women in those kind of arenas. So, but it's changing. Women are beginning to think differently about it. Men are beginning to think differently about it, because the conversation on male entitlement and biases is happening. So I think just more coaching, more being deliberate in the workplace, having seminars and webinars and all those things, and bringing it to the fore, I think that would help it to change.
And I certainly think this is why the Commonwealth Enterprise and Investment Council has put this subject out there for discussion, for the world to talk about it. I'll come to you, Apostle Alakija, to address the same question, because you mentioned it in one of your remarks. What needs to change to tackle these unseen biases?
Right. To eliminate unseen biases in the workplace, there's a need to make a conscious effort in bringing this issue to the fore. First, start conversations in the workplace concerning biases that people experience. We need to get people who have experienced workplace biases to share their feelings and talk about it, and have it impact them into discussions during staff meetings. I think that needs to happen there. Of course, these conversations also need to happen in homes, in families, amongst the mother, daughter. You get what I'm saying? Even right from an early age. And then let me come back to still in the office. Train staff members regularly on the dangers of unseen biases in the workplace, and how they can affect productivity and innovation. We need to train staff on how to recognize unseen biases and prevent them from happening. That's very important. And we need to also provide psychological support for those who have been victims of this kind of behavior. We need to encourage women to take up positions that are traditionally for men. And as my sister from Nigeria said, yes, we are beginning to see a lot more women being chairmen of banks. And, it just warms my heart when more women, are being put in those positions. Yes, true. We do not have any governors, any female governors yet. That needs to change. We've seen deputy governors, but women need to get into those seats. That needs to change, amongst so many other changes that need to take place.
Thank you for that. I mean, I love the fact that I hope it doesn't take us, and it have taken that 100 years thing and it's sticking with me right now. And I'm thinking, I hope it doesn't take 100 years before we get a female governor in Nigeria.
I hope not.
So ladies, thank you so much. We're going to move on from the panel discussion now. We've had, as we were talking, there were questions just coming in. It just goes to show how people in the audience are really loving what we're talking about. The first, and I'll open it up to the floor. I'll throw the question out there, and whoever wants to take it first can do that. This is a bit of a long one. It says, evidence from the United Nations Women on the impact of COVID-19 suggests that women's economic lives will be affected disproportionately and differently from men, and that COVID-19 is rolling back on women's economic gains of past decades. How can multilateral institutions and organizations such as the Commonwealth ensure that international response addresses gender impacts of this pandemic? I think we've touched on it, but I'll open it up to the floor. Who's happy to take this one?
Okay, I'll have a go. Oh, okay. Dame Martina, I yield the floor to you then.
No, please go.
Actually, yes. I had actually read a similar study on the impact of COVID-19 on women. I think one of the major impacts is the fact that, one, a lot of women who are in less skilled jobs had lost their jobs. A lot of women have childcare issues. A lot of women, the study basically said, a lot of women are also quitting the workplace because of the stresses that are involved in this. So I think first, the government has to be aware of this, right, and put structures in place to help women to stay in work, or to help them to restart their businesses, because quite a number of businesses went bust. Well, I'm using the example of Nigeria, where you find that the higher percentage of women are actually SMEs. So during this period, a lot of SMEs went bust. So they definitely need funding, targeted funding, to get them back, right, into business. Also, as in, organizations need to be aware and be sympathetic, right, or empathic, more like, of the challenges that women have had over the last 18 months and are still having, and make that part of their diversification policy, as in making it work a more gender-friendly environment, taking into consideration all the needs and the challenges that these women are facing, right? And yes, I think you mentioned the Commonwealth. I think, yes, international organizations, and I know quite that the UN had a study, and I know there's some various other organizations, and both private and public, that have had studies on this particular issue. It's in the forefront, and the first step is to talk about it and then begin to look for solutions. But we have to have practical solutions, right? What they are at this point in time, outside of getting employers to support women more and be more flexible and give more women flexibility in the workplace, right? And financing as well, which is important, right? I suppose that there can also be other issues or other things that can be done. Thank you.
Hey, Martin, I'll come to you. We're going to chip in there.
Actually, I was going to say exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. So that's helpful.
That's wonderful. Thank you. We still have.
Can I
of course.
After the problems that emanated from this COVID-19, put people in such bad positions with their businesses. I know that some of the states in Nigeria, that some of the state governments in Nigeria have set up agencies where they have received donations from the public, and they've set up committees to get others who have been affected to get some of the funding to replenish what they've lost in the past. And I think that since it's been for men, both men and women, if we want to focus on women, it can be replicated for women. Such organizations can come up by state governments or individuals as well. People can gather themselves up, organizations can come together and put donations in one pot, and help the women out with their businesses. It's just the same idea can be replicated, but for the focus can be for women.
No, absolutely agree with that. I mean, this is, we could carry on talking about this. An hour is not enough for these subjects, and the questions that are coming in are incredible. I will stay with you, Apostle Alakija, because one of the questions that has just come in is, how can lending rules be changed to favor financing women in business? What needs to be done? And the reason why I'm coming to you is because you're doing it. You know, you talk about access to finance, contributing to GDP. It's our job looking at the 4,000 female entrepreneurs and the people you're supporting, the grants you're giving. How can lending rules be changed to favor financing women in business?
Well, I will take Nigeria as an example. There's the bank of industry. But everything I hear about that bank, it's as if they want to know what you ate for dinner last night. It's so strict. It's so stringent. It's so difficult for people to be able to access funding from banks like that. I think they need to lower their rules, you understand, to especially accommodate women and encourage more women to be able to come and accept financing at encouraging rates, you understand? Not make it as stringent as they do for others, you understand? Because women need to be given special support, you understand? I believe that more banks, not just the Bank of Industry, more banks should be encouraged by governments, you understand, to be able to provide financing for women at less stringent conditions for women, to encourage more women to come to them. Because how do women get financing without being asked to come to the bedroom, if you know what I mean? So the government has to help. Those legislations make a huge difference. And if they can be regulated and enforced, I believe that it will make a huge difference to financing for women.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, ladies. Unfortunately, I'm being pinged because we've got literally a couple of minutes before our session ends. Like I said, I could be here for another hour with such inspirational women. I have one question to ask you ladies. For each and every one of the panelists, could you please name me a female role model that you look up to today, an inspiring woman that you look up to today? To end this session, I would like your female role model, somebody who inspired you. I'll start with you, Amanda.
My role model is not around today, but her name was Margaret Thatcher. And as a young teenage girl, I was the first in my family to go to, I knew I was going to be the first in my family to go to university. And I saw a woman who was visible to me, who went to the local grammar school, who got to Oxford. And the reason that I went to Oxford was because of a woman that I never met. And that's Margaret Thatcher.
Thank you so much for that. I'll come to you, Martina.
Well, my role model is actually my best friend, and she's a woman called Sharma Pereira, and we've been very close friends for 40 years. She's a broadcaster and a journalist, and she just is hugely, hugely inspiring, mentors vast amounts of young women, did masses during COVID, and I just wish there were more of her.
Thank you very much for that. Anita, I'll come to you.
My role model is a Nigerian lady called Funke Opeke, who owns Main One, and she's such an inspiration because she's an engineer and she's in the telecom sector, and her company they lay fiber cables and support all the other telecoms. So I'm seriously in awe of her, and she's a powerhouse.
Thank you. And Apostle Alakita, I'll come to you.
I love Mrs. Ibukwa. She just recently moved on from being the chair of First Bank of Nigeria, I think the biggest bank in Nigeria, and she did very well for her tenure. She's had her own business for over 30 years. She recently celebrated the 30th anniversary of her chair's business. And I was there. I've known her for a long time. She's an all-rounder. And another thing that warms my heart about her, she's a God lover. She's a pastor as well.
Oh, amazing. Thank you, ladies. And for me, you all inspire me. My inspiration are unsung heroes, the rural women who are in 40 degrees heat and working every day with smiles on their faces. I would like to thank you all. I have to say, this has been an amazing session. I hope everybody has enjoyed it out there, and I hope you stay on for our final session of the day of the summit. The title is The African Opportunity, starting in 15 minutes. And I think it's chaired by Mr. Olashupo Shashore, partner at African Law Practice. Thank you so much, lady. It has been my honor and my pleasure to chair this session, and you guys are absolutely incredible. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to chair this session with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well done. Thank you.
Well done, lady.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
God bless you. Bye-bye.
God bless you.
Bye.